All right. Thank you so much for tuning in with me. I apologize for the just little pause in communication. Last week we all graduated and we're just all coming down from that graduation high. This is Dr. Robin Butler signing on with you to give you actually a two-part training, one on Mendeley's use with APA citing and also using it as a research curation and repository, particularly for your literature review. So I'm just going to kind of go through step by step. And this is totally intended for you guys to get as much familiarity with it as possible so that you can use it hopefully for your dissertation and really, you know, pretty much use it for any other papers that you might have to write leading up to that big dissertation. So I wanted to go ahead and sort of introduce you to Mendeley again. I know we had an opportunity to go over it a little bit, but I'm going to go over it in depth tonight just to kind of show you the capabilities of the software program. And as you can see, this is my desktop. I have some personal items over here. So this is my physical desktop. Fewer files on it, cleaned it off, good for me at this time. As you can see, I have a Mendeley desktop, and I wanted to kind of differentiate the two. When you go onto the website actually gives you an option to download Mendeley as a desktop tool, or you can use it virtually. To be completely transparent, I think that the Mendeley software curation tool works better downloaded onto your desktops or laptops or tablets even. When you sign in, you have a tendency to lose features that you would fully have if you had used a desktop. I believe that the reason why they have Mendeley used as just a quick sign-on, you can sign on virtually of course, is because it also has a lot of other capabilities, meaning that you can share your work with other people within your field. You can pretty much share across the board to other researchers within your field. So at this point, you might not do that. It's definitely a great tool for when you are when you've pretty much graduated and and finished the dissertation. But the desktop version of Mendeley, I think it would be more feasible for you to use at this point. So what I did was I downloaded the software, okay, and at this point I do have Mendeley on my desktop. I've had it for quite some time now, and Mendeley actually updates itself. So every time you kind of go into it, if you double click Mendeley, the actual software, it'll update everything that you've done. Say if you've signed in remotely, okay, and you added some things within that sign on, whether if you sign on and added some articles in remotely, and someone else somewhere else other than your desktop, what Mendeley will do is it will consistently sync your articles. So that's a really good thing. Okay, so you don't have to ever worry about losing your articles no matter where you upload them. So I think that back to the remote sign-on, I think sometimes, if you guys are working, if you're at work or you're somewhere other than home or somewhere other than your laptops, you can still upload those articles that you may find along the way. And when you get pretty much, right there at your desktop and wherever Mendeley is downloaded, you can go ahead and start curating your articles. Okay, so as this as mentioned, Mendeley has different updates. Again, update found. You can choose to install it, or not now. We're kind of going to go for not now for right now, and just for the interest of time. But what I have is here I have all of my articles that are already pretty much uploaded within Mendeley. This is your sync device right here. Looks like a little circle going around. This is for when you get home or get to your computer where you have Mendeley downloaded. If you hit that sync tab right here, then all of the articles, all the changes that were made remotely will then be on your desktop. So it's really important to probably make that one of the first things that you do when opening up Mendeley. Now, as you can see on the left side of my library, you'll see findings, intro, literature review, systematic review, dissertation. I have a tendency to sort of separate my articles by pretty much the steps that I will consistently use to produce the dissertation. For example, with the literature review, and we talked about the literature review articles. Some of the articles are used for the systematic review, but not a lot. Your systematic review is its own methodology on its own, if you will, and your literature review is think of it as pretty much you're gathering the initial information on your research. Why is this a problem? You're pretty much developing as to why this is an issue that needs to be dealt with. So your literature review is just basically what it is. It's a review of literature from all aspects. And we'll get into it in a second. So what I wanted to do for demonstration purposes, I do have a full systematic review dissertation, but before we get to that, I want to go in to a blank screen right here, as you can see, and it's under the folder where it has literature review. And what I wanted, I kind of purposely left it blank because I wanted to kind of demonstrate, types of things that you can do with the articles. So what I do is I basically already have my articles downloaded, whether I go to UMUC library and just download some articles from my search string. I download all of them, and mainly all of them are PDF files. So what I do is when I'm ready to add those articles to the Mendeley software, what I do is I go up and I kind of left click this little arrow. You can add files, you can add entire folders, and you can watch folder or add entries manually. I chose to kind of look for the PDFs first. Mendeley does have a feature where it allows you to look for certain articles, okay, as well. Okay, and this pretty much, it allows you to pull different articles from different from different publications, and I didn't want to do that because I wanted to sort of just stay with the UMUC library. I wanted to kind of stay with all of the databases that they use. Doesn't mean it's wrong to go outside of that, but I wanted to remain systematic in my search. So what I did was I started to add files, went to my desktop here. As you can see, I have quite a few things on my desktop. But I went into where I have articles, right click that, and as you can see, I broke down a lot of my articles into different folders. And I don't, this may work for you, but it was a little bit better for me. My research topic was basically how to retain the millennial generation in United States public sector organizations. So public sector organizations is really broad because, you know, globally public sector can mean something entirely different. In the U.S., you know, public sector, wow, is very, very big. But I wanted to sort of just talk about state, local, and federal entities. Okay, so during this time of my research, and it's a reiterative process, okay, I was basically looking into millennial motivation, and then I looked at millennial retention. So down the line, I found that retention was a little bit easier to tackle than just motivation and retention. If I tackled retention, motivation would come out some sort of way. And you'll find that when you go back and forth to your research question and sort of as you're identifying things that are coming out from your literature, you'll pretty much find yourself reconstructing your research question. So, long story short, what I did was I looked at different aspects of public sector organizations and millennials, and again, public sector management I had at first, but it soon turned into public sector organizations. So sometimes it kind of plays, you have to play on the words a little bit, but nonetheless, I put them in different categories, okay? So basically, for here, I'm going to go with millennial retention and state, local entities. I kind of numbered my PDFs, and, you know, again, you can, I find it best to, you know, to label them by author looking back, but as you can see, once I selected all of my articles, it just dumped them right into the Mendeley database, which was really cool. You notice that once it dumps it, you'll see all of them filtered by authors, which is really cool. and I'm going to show you in a minute as to why it is. But each article, as you can see, Mendeley is a little, by being a repository, it has a few little glitches that need to be worked out. For example, my first article of Henstra doesn't have a year, and it doesn't have where it's published, and you know, it has of course when it's added, but it doesn't have the year that it was published, and the rest of them, for the most part, it grabs the years. But for these right here, it does not. So sometimes you have to, it takes a little bit of fishing and getting the articles, but the name of the game is to have them in one place so that you can go through and actually annotate them. Okay, and that's what you definitely want to do. So you can see right here, even though it indicates that it has no title, if you go down a little further and hit this PDF, you double click it, you'll see the title right here. Okay, so it you know, again, it's a little quirky, but it's just a matter of kind of going through and you know, making sure you have all of these in one place. Now, as far as annotating them, you have what we call details, notes, and contents. You have, it automatically adds a separate tab for the single article when you go through and sort of annotate your articles. Another clever thing that it does, I hope it's playing nice with me. Alright, another clever thing that it does is that if you go back to the library and say if you want to grab another article as well, you can just simply double click it and it'll keep all of your articles here. So sometimes you can go back and sort of compare and contrast some of your articles moving forward, and if you don't have any use for them anymore, voila, you can just click it on off. Now, as you go through and sort of, and this is our literature review phase. We haven't even gotten to the systematic review. We're just trying to find out what retains millennials in public sector organizations. And in this case, this particular article talks about public service motivation, which somewhat aligns with how to retain them. So this kind of gives you, with literature review, you're looking for that overview information on every component of your research question. Okay, so this talks about millennials in public service, and let's say if you want to go ahead and highlight this right here and say, wow, this is a really important note. You can highlight the text and add a note. You can copy the selected text to the clipboard, okay, which is really nice for annotating, or you can simply highlight the text. Most times what I did was highlight and write a note here, and the note could probably be anything from, I could say, this would be overview information on how millennials adapt to the public sector. Okay. And once I click off, it kind of keeps that as my note. If you go to note, under here where it has private annotations, it keeps a record of what you put here. Okay. Alrighty. Same with, let's get one with a full title. Same with this right here. This kind of has a full title, which is quite nice. You can go down and either double click this, or you can double click this and it'll come up. And again, your literature review, you're going to have a lot of gray information there, a lot of statistics, pretty much something, I call it, your literature review is pretty much a place where you are building your case. Why is this a problem for the practitioner? That is basically what comes down to it. Why is this an issue for the practitioner? Okay, so you are building your case, and while building your case, you're giving overview information as to why this is something interesting, or why is this worthy to be studied. Okay. Another really, I'm just going to click these off here. Another really great tool with this, and of course, and I forgot to tell you, of course, if you have no need for an article, let's say you can click on that and you can delete, you can go up and delete certain, you can remove certain folders, you can, and of course, a lot of times, you can right click and delete documents. So it's very, very, as you can see, it's very, very easy to use. Okay, very easy to use. And as you can see, I also used Mendeley pretty much for when I started doing my systematic review as well. And so some of the articles, as you can see, even though these were kind of used for literature, a lot of them were used for literature review. As you can see, this same article was also used for my systematic review as well, because these are, what I did was I numbered all of my themes: informality, civility, immediate feedback. And I sort of copied and pasted into these particular notes, and anything that I found really interesting that related to things like civility, what I did was I copied that information and I provided a page number, and that was another way that I could keep up with all of my information at that time before having to dump it into NVivo and actually letting NVivo do the work. But it was important to me that I made myself familiar with the literature before sort of dumping it into NVivo. And you'll see in a second as to how I did that. So moving right along, another very important thing about Mendeley is the fact that you can install, and I'm going to tools, you can install a Microsoft Word plugin. Now the reason why mine says uninstall is because I've already installed it, but this is another great feature that the desktop supplies for the user. Again, it's a little difficult to do if you are if you're remote, but or virtual somewhere else other than your desktop. But once you're once you're using the desktop, this works really great when you're ready to report out and write on these particular articles. So let me just give you an example of such. So I went on and I went to tools, installed, and we should have already probably done this in class, but we went on and installed the Microsoft Word plugin. Okay. And what I did was this is an earlier paper that I did actually back in, I didn't have a date on here, but this is one of the classes that I had with Dr. Watts, and we had to write a paper on signaling theory. Well, I did. We had selected ones that we had to write on. And I've always liked this theory, by the way. It was a very interesting theory. But let's just say that we are, we're in the midst of writing and things of that sort. And let's just say that right here, this particular sentence needs to be cited. Okay, this particular citing. Actually, let me do the second one, because normally the first one is not good APA if you cite the first sentence. But let's just say the second sentence here needs to be cited. Okay, so here what I did was I go to references. Okay, and what I do is, because the plugin automatically updates this particular citation tool. So I hit citation, and I can either, if I already know the author's name, I can put the name in here, or I can go directly to Mendeley, which is in my library. If I go to Mendeley, let's just say I want Aruna. Okay, Aruna. So if I hit Aruna, okay, I'm going to double click on Aruna. And first and foremost, what I always like to do when I'm getting ready to cite is to get the page number. If you're directly citing with quotations, or I believe that the updated version of APA, if you're paraphrasing, however, you can still use the page number. So I know that Dr. Cree is very big on page numbers and correct citing in APA. So I was very diligent in doing that. So let's just say that it comes from, this is the same sentence, and it comes from page 96. So what I do is, once I find it, I hit cite. Now cite, I believe it's formatting, okay, so don't let that scare you. So it puts in, Aruna and Anitha, which are the authors of that particular one. So, that quick, I'm forgetting what page number, it's 96. And let's just say that I want to go ahead and put my page number in there. I can go ahead and do that here. Okay, so that's a little bit of work, extra added work that you would probably have to put in. It doesn't really cross over with the page numbers but I think it's good, because I think that it makes you a little diligent about adding in those page numbers, having that extra step and putting in those page numbers, because a lot of times we leave that information out. So that's a really cool trick that that we can also do. Another thing I believe that Mendeley does, and this is my my page. I'm going to keep my manual edit. Another thing that they do is that once you once you have inserted that citation there, you can also insert your bibliography, and as you can see, it perfectly puts in your bibliography for that particular article. Once again, I would still check, and that's one of the things with editing your paper. I would still check against the APA manual and make sure that this is correct. But it really saves a huge headache with having your references kind of all over the place at that point. So Mendeley does pretty much include that information as well. Okay. The most important thing, I guess, in closing, regarding Mendeley, is the fact that you can go through each article, and this is a really sure way of you making yourselves truly prepared in organizing your work. A lot of the, I just want to say one last thing. I remember a lot of our assignments leading up to the core courses. Basically, I remember the directions being things sort of, use 10 articles to write about a certain subject or topic, use 20 articles. A lot of that is sort of getting you prepared to read and organize articles so that you can create a very good dissertation, and sort of making sure you sort of align everything with those directions. This is definitely a supportive program, software program for those types of assignments. Like you can count how many articles you use, and in this way you can pretty much have substantial evidence as to how literature supports your research questions and your efforts in writing certain sections of the dissertation, and ultimately completing a lot of your assignments that you'll have here. Hopefully this definitely helps you, pretty much at least starting to, have a lot of needed information, and hopefully you'll give this particular software program a chance. It's not really hard. As you can see, you don't really have a whole lot of labels here to choose from, but it's a very effective software. So I definitely hope you like it. Thank you so much.